everybody. Welcome once again to another edition of Quick Trivia with Mike. It's the weekly game show right here on channel 955 where we test your knowledge of facts. Some of them are a little bit more historical in nature. Some of them are really contemporary. Hopefully all of them are a lot of fun. I'm your host and the quiz master, Mike Brever. I invite you to sit back, relax. Let's have a lot of fun this next half hour, shall we? You know how the game works by now. I give you the answers to 3 questions I posed last week. I then pose 3 new questions for the coming week. We also have a tiebreaker, which is the bumper music on the show. Identify the bumper music, and if 2 or more of you get the same number of questions correct, you could be in the winner's circle for the coming week. Get your picture on channel 955 all week long to the admiration of all of your neighbors. However, before we get into the show itself, we have a brand new feature that I'd like to start with. We're going to announce the birthdays this week. Those of you that have birthdays this week are Nancy Setlock on May 26th. She is celebrating the 69th anniversary of her 29th birthday. Nancy Setlock on May 26th. We also have Betty Gore. Betty Gore on May 28th is celebrating the 64th anniversary of her 29th birthday. Happy birthday to Nancy and Betty. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. Let's get right into the show, shall we? As you know, we start off with the answers to last week's questions. Last week, my first question had to do with Halley's Comet. It's that comet that comes back to Earth every 75 years. You know, its earliest recording goes back to Babylonian times. It is, in fact, named for Halley because Halley was the first to predict when it would reoccur 75 years later. He didn't actually live long enough to see its reoccurrence, but when it happened, just as he had predicted, the world decided to call it Halley's Comet. Now, ironically, there was a reoccurrence of Halley's Comet in 1910. Pointed out to you that on May 19th, 1910, when it was first noticed again, radio was just kicking off. It was the beginning of the information age. We talked in the past about how radio became a method of communication. It was used in World War I, World War II. For the first time in history, we had real-time reports of what was happening, newsworthy, around the world. Well, along with the opportunity to spread facts quickly, we also have the opportunity to spread rumors, gossip, and innuendo quickly. People did, in fact, know that there was a toxic gas in the tail of Halley's Comet, cyanogen. There was a rumor that spread rapidly that life on Earth would end because of the toxic gas cyanogen in the tail of Halley's Comet. Now, of course, for a comet that comes back every 75 years, why its reoccurrence in 1910 would end civilization as we know it is a mystery to me, but people bought it. And as a result, there was panic buying of 3 things in particular. I'm sure there was a lot of strange and weird things going on at that time. But 3 items in particular were well known for their panic buying. I asked you to name at least one. For extra credit, give me all 3. Well, the first one actually kind of makes a lot of sense. If you think that cyanogen, a toxic gas, is going to kill you, gas masks. Gas masks were panic bought in 1910 to save people from Halley's Comet. In addition to that, anti-comet pills. I'm not sure how pills were going to save people. Maybe it was thought that they would change the DNA sequencing of people or something like that. But anti-comet pills were very popular in those days. In addition to that, anti-comet umbrellas. I'm not sure, first of all, how an umbrella is going to save you from a gas. But if things are going to fall from the comet and fall to Earth, I'm not sure how an umbrella is going to save you from falling objects either. But anti-comet umbrellas were also very popular at that time. So there you have it. Gas masks, anti-comet pills, and anti-comet umbrellas. Those were the three items that I was able to identify which led to panic buying in 1910 for the annual, or not annual, but the traditional 75-year reoccurrence of Halley's Comet. The second item we talked about. You know, we delve a lot into baseball. I really love the sport. It's the America's pastime for a very valid reason. It has captured the imagination of our nation for 150 years or more. It became professional about 120 years ago. Everybody knows the heroes of the game. There are lots of traditions that have been spawned with baseball. The seventh inning stretch, the singing of Take Me Out to the Ball Game, the Red Sox tradition of Sweet Caroline being played in the eighth inning, Frank Sinatra singing New York, New York at Yankee Stadium. All of these things, they make going to a baseball game really, really special. I also pointed out that in the history of baseball, only one number has been retired throughout the entire league. It is number 42 of Jackie Robinson fame. This year, number 44 is being worn on the sleeve of every professional ball player to honor the passing of Henry Aaron. Henry Aaron, who held the home run record for a while, passing Babe Ruth, of course. I asked you, however, and I cautioned you, this was a trick question. I pointed out that one player, and only one player, had his birth date on his uniform. I asked you, who was that player who was allowed to have his birth date on his uniform? Well, born in 1948, on May 17th, Carlos May, the only professional baseball player to have his birth date on his uniform. How is that possible? Carlos May was born on May 17th. He chose number 17 as his uniform number. And as a result, emblazoned on the back for all time, he had May, his last name, coincidentally the month of his birth, and 17, his uniform number, coincidentally the date of his birth. When you looked on his uniform, it said May 17, his birth date. Carlos May was the only ball player to have his birth date emblazoned on his uniform. Coincidentally, nobody got that question correct. Nobody got Carlos May correct. The Quizmaster stumped everybody. Doesn't happen very often, but when it does, I like to point it out. We also talked a little bit last week about George Washington. All the various significant highlights of his life. Headed up the First Continental Congress, the General of the Continental Army, First President of the United States. Just really some wonderful, noteworthy things about George Washington. I pointed out to you that he was given a great honor in 1922 when the United States presented a statue of George Washington to England. It was to commemorate the friendship of the two countries, the fact that World War I had just ended, and we have a lasting and enduring friendship. You know that old saying, we are two nations separated by a common language. Well, at that time it just wasn't true anymore. The two countries had become the closest of allies. The statue of Washington that was presented to England, the original actually resides in the Virginia state capitol in Richmond. So it's a replica of that. There are actually 25 replicas of it around the world. Lima, Peru has one, another one in Washington, D.C. But this one that we're talking about was in London's Trafalgar Square. Trafalgar Square, you know, actually to commemorate England's greatest triumph in battle, they have a statue of the man who actually handed England one of its greatest defeats. I mentioned to you that there was something extremely noteworthy about what the statue of George Washington rests upon. And I asked you what it was. The answer is that legend had it that George Washington once swore that he would never set foot on British soil ever again. To pay honor to that pledge of George Washington, which may or may not actually have been true, but to pay honor to that pledge of George Washington, a plot of land from Virginia was shipped over from the United States to England, planted in Trafalgar Square, and the statue rests on Virginia soil in Trafalgar Square. And that is how Great Britain honors the legacy of George Washington, who swore, as legend has it, that he would never set foot on British soil again. There you have it. That was the answer to question number 3. Now, as you all know, we do have the tiebreaker of the bumper music from last week's show. What was the music last week? The great, great classic hit from Marvin Gaye. What's going on? What's going on? Nobody actually identified the bumper music. We may use it again sometime as a result of that. Our winner, however, and returning to the winner's circle after a prolonged absence, I believe she's a snowbird and just got back, Sandra Meyer. Sandra Meyer, welcome back to the winner's circle. Maybe Sandra was the winner last week as well. I don't really recall. Maybe she was. But at any rate, welcome back to the winner's circle, Sandra Meyer. You've been missed. There you have it, folks. Those are the answers to our 3 questions from last week. We're going to take a brief intermission, and we'll be right back with our 3 new questions for the coming week.
Here's a penny, Mickey. Thanks for the gumball. Get me a gumball for a penny, Bozo. Thanks for the gumball. Penny for a gumball, Popeye. Thanks for the gumball.
Gumball Banks. Get gumball refills and fill up Mickey Mouse, Popeye, or Bozo. See the gumballs go down. Watch the pennies go up.
What are you going to do with all your pennies, Popeye? Buy raw gumballs.
Gumball Banks from Hasbro.
Welcome back to the second half of our show. I hope you took the time to go get yourself a cup of coffee, Maybe even get yourself a donut. What a great way to spend intermission. Even relax in the second half of the show and have that little snack that maybe you got for yourself during intermission. We've got 3 really good questions for you, I think. Maybe you've noticed there's a fly buzzing around here. Too hard to catch? We're just going to keep right on going. The fly's not going to interfere with the trivia questions I've got for you. We've got a great offering from looking at Bing Crosby, that wonderful crooner from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Wonderful entertainer. We're also going to be looking at the Statue of Liberty. And we're going to take a look at Frank Sinatra. 3 really great topics. I hope you have some fun with them. We're going to begin with Bing Crosby. Why? Because on May 29th, 1942, Bing Crosby recorded the #1 hit song of all time, White Christmas. White Christmas has sold over 50 million copies. When you add the other artists in who also have done covers of White Christmas, over 100 million copies of the song have sold. Bing Crosby recorded the song in only 18 minutes. It was done with the John Scott Trotter Orchestra and the Ken Darby Singers as background, and it was done for Decca Records. It topped the United States charts 3 times, 1942, 45, and 46. Of course, you know, World War II, people were very nostalgic at that time, wanting to reminisce about home, holidays, things like this. This is a very mournful song that has a touch of lightheartedness in it as well. People just loved it. It was perfect for the era. It also headlined 2 extremely popular movies, Holiday Inn in 1942 and White Christmas in 1945. The song, as you know, was written by Irving Berlin. Ironically, Irving Berlin didn't even celebrate Christmas. Irving Berlin was Jewish. But he understood what made a good song, and he knew that this was a hit. Ironically, though, he didn't think that in Holiday Inn, which was the movie that really brought White Christmas out, he didn't think White Christmas was going to be the big hit. He thought the Valentine's Day song, Be Careful, It's My Heart, he thought that was going to be the big hit. Of course, it turned out he was wrong. White Christmas was the hit. Bing Crosby was born, of course, in 1903, May 3rd, 1903, in Tacoma, Washington. His family in 1906 moved to Spokane in eastern Washington state, and that's really where he was raised. He was the 4th of 7 children. He actually got the name Bing because Valentine Hobart named him Bingo from Bingville after a comic feature in the local paper called the Bingville Bugle, which the young Harry liked. In time, Bingo got shortened to Bing, and that's how it came about. Named after a comic character from the Bingville Bugle. Bingo from Bingville. That's how he got to be named Bing Crosby. Now, you know, we've talked about Bing several times. You know just what a tremendous impact he had on music and entertainment at the height of his career. I will say, though, Bing Crosby was always very humble, especially about his role in making White Christmas a huge hit. Bing Crosby actually said of his role in the song's success that the song was so well done that a jackdaw with a cleft palate could have sung it successfully. Really a wonderful tribute to Irving Berlin. In his career, Bing Crosby had 396 chart singles, including roughly 25 #1 hits. We say 25 because there were different ways, different charts back in those days of tracking what was #1. Of Crosby actually had a separate single charting every year from 1931 until 1954, a 23-year span. The annual re-release of White Christmas extended that streak to 1957. So from 1931 to 1957, he had a single on the charts every single year. Billboard determined that Bing Crosby was America's most successful recording act of the 30s and the 40s. In 1960, Crosby was honored the first citizen of the recording industry. For 15 years, Crosby was named the top 10, was named among the top 10 acts in box office sales, and for 5 of those years, 1944 to 1948, he topped the world. #1 in box office sales for 5 years running. He sang 4 Academy Award-winning songs: Sweet Leilani in 37, White Christmas in 42, Swinging on a Star in 44, and In the Cool, Cool, Cool of the Evening in 51. And of course, he also won the Academy Award for Best Actor for his role in Going My Way, 1944. He received 23 gold and platinum records. An interesting fact about Bing Crosby, however, and I've already pointed out to you that it only took 18 minutes to record White Christmas, but every single time that Bing Crosby stepped into a recording studio, the very first thing he did was have the band play the song all the way through so that he could listen. Why? Why did Bing Crosby have the band play the song the entire way through at the beginning of every recording session? That is question number 1 from this week's trivia contest. Question number 2. We're going to take a look at the Statue of Liberty. The statue's official name is Liberty Enlightening the World. The torch, of course, is a symbol of liberty and enlightenment. Observing that torches can also be used, however, for destruction, one of the original designers of the Statue of Liberty, Edouard René de la Boulaye, clarified that Lady Liberty's torch is not the torch that sets a fire, but the flambeau, the candle flame that enlightens. The National Park Service describes it as lighting the way to freedom. You know, and we're getting a phone call, and we are just going to let that go. You are more important than who's ever calling me right now. The Statue of Liberty wears a stola and a pella, a gown and a cloak, which are common in depictions of Roman goddesses, such as Libertas, the goddess of liberty. The statue is also covered with a robe from head to toe as a result of that. There are 7 spikes or rays that come out of the crown. There are 2 thoughts about what they symbolize. One is that it's the 7 rays represent the 7 continents on Earth. Fromers, however, says that it represents the 7 seas of the Earth. The National Park Service says that the 25 windows in the crown represent gemstones found on the Earth. The broken shackles and axe head at the feet of Lady Liberty represent the throwing off of tyranny and oppression. Some say the chains are a substitute for the broken jug that often appears alongside depictions of Libertas, the Roman goddess of liberty. The National Park Service writes that statues as a whole symbolize American independence and end all types of servitude and oppression. One feature of the pedestal that was intended to be symbolic is the row of shields that encircle it. That went by the wayside a long time ago. The reason is that when the statue was cast, there were only 40 states. Therefore, there are only 40 shields that surround the pedestal. We have 50 states now. So the shields now are basically an abstract element in the art of the statue itself. If you also look closely, you'll notice that Freemasons who built the Statue of Liberty left some of their symbolism behind as well. The square and compass symbol can be found on a plaque on Liberty Island. The one close to the Statue of Liberty has a G in the middle, which either symbolizes God, the great architect of the universe, or geometry, depending upon who you ask. I'm not a Freemason. I know a couple. Maybe I'll ask them one of these days and get their interpretation of what it means. I will say, though, there is one item of the Statue of Liberty that I find fascinating. It has to do with the feet of Lady Liberty. There is something about the feet, the toes specifically, of Lady Liberty, which is extremely unique. What do they symbolize? What is it that the toes of Lady Liberty symbolize? That's question number 2. The toes of Lady Liberty. What is it about them that is unique? And what is it that they symbolize? Our third question today. We're going to go a little bit into Frank Sinatra. Chairman of the board, one of my favorite entertainers. Kind of bridges all generations. If you appreciate good music, you appreciate Frank Sinatra. We're going to take a look at a little bit of his personal life as well, though. Specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about the Rat Pack. The Rat Pack, of course, was an informal group of entertainers. Frank Sinatra and his cronies were the second iteration of the Rat Pack. The original Rat Pack was a group of A-lister show business friends, who met casually at the Los Angeles home of Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall. The original Rat Pack was Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall, and their friends. In the 1960s, the group morphed into Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop, and for a while, Peter Lawford. They appeared together on stage and in films in the early 1960s, including the films Ocean's 11, Sergeant's 3. After Peter Lawford's expulsion, which we're going to talk about in a minute, they filmed Robin and the Seven Hoods, because Peter Lawford was already kicked out of the Rat Pack by Frank himself. Bing Crosby filled in for the role that Lawford was supposed to play. So at that time, it was Sinatra, Martin, Davis, Lawford, Joey Bishop. At times, there were hangers-on, called mascots, if you will. Marilyn Monroe, Angie Dickinson, Juliet Prowse, Buddy Greco, Shirley MacLaine were often referred to as the Rat Pack mascots. I mean, the Rat Pack in its era was the king of cool. If you were an entertainer, you wanted to be like them. If you were friends of them, your career and the success of your career was ensured. How is it that Peter Lawford got expelled from the Rat Pack? Well, Peter Lawford was married to the sister of John F. Kennedy. He got the Rat Pack involved in politics in the 1960s. And of course, Frank Sinatra loved it. He loved rubbing elbows with very, very famous people. And to be rubbing elbows with a presidential candidate, and ultimately the President of the United States, really was something that appealed to him. In March of 1962, Kennedy was planning a vacation in California, and Lawford convinced Sinatra to allow Kennedy to use Sinatra's home at Palm Springs. Sinatra actually went to great lengths to modify his Palm Springs house to accommodate the president. He even installed a helipad so that Marine One could land or take off, so that the president had easy access to whatever his activities were during the day. Well, RFK, Robert Kennedy, got involved after all of this transpired, convinced John F. Kennedy that Sinatra's ties to the mob were really not seemly for JFK's reputation, especially given the fact that a re-election campaign would be starting in less than 12 months. He convinced JFK to go somewhere else. Sinatra never forgave Peter Lawford for what he believed was tricking him into this, getting his hopes up, and then dashing those hopes. Later in their career, actually Lawford and Sinatra never did make up. Lawford actually, his career kind of took a nosedive after that as well. He died of acute cirrhosis of the liver. But a brilliant career prior to all of this stuff going on. And I'm not saying that being estranged from Sinatra ruined his career, but it certainly didn't help. I mean, there was one time when Lawford tried to make amends. He showed up in Vegas when Sinatra was appearing, and he let the stagehands know he wished that they would let Sinatra know that he was in the audience, and if there was an opportunity after the show to come backstage and have a chat. Sinatra told the stagehands to let Lawford know that until Lawford left the arena, he wasn't going to appear. Lawford had to leave, and that kind of cemented their relationship. There was always the rumors about the Rat Pack womanizing and gambling and drinking and all the rest of that stuff. Joey Bishop often said in a 1998 interview, "I never saw Frank, Dean Martin, Sammy, or Peter drunk during performances. That was only a gag. And if you think that these gentlemen had to chase women, you're wrong. They had to chase women away." So Joey Bishop really tried to debunk the whole thing. However, Sinatra really had quite the reputation during his era. Which leads me to our third question today. On May 23rd, 1985, something happened that has linked Frank Sinatra and Mother Teresa together forever. Actually, I'm going to go one step further. It links Mother Teresa, Frank Sinatra, and Ronald Reagan together forever. What happened May 23rd, 1985 that joins those three individuals at the hip for all time? There you have it, folks. Those are our three questions for the day. Put on your thinking caps and get us the answers. Again, if two or more of you get the same number of questions correct, listen to the bumper music. The bumper music at the beginning and at the end of the show. That bumper music will be the tiebreaker. So listen close. I see the fly just flew in front of the camera again. Kind of starting to feel like Mike Pence. If it's on my head, let me know. At any rate, that's the tiebreaker. So get your answers into me by noon on Monday, and maybe you can be in the winner's circle, just like Sandra Meyer this week. How do you get me your answers? Well, you can email me at mbraver@eastcastleplace.com. You can call me on my desk phone at 963-8425 and leave a message. You can write your answers on a sheet of paper, put them on my conference table in my office, or put them in the mailbox behind the reception desk on the first floor. Any one of those ways, get me your answers by noon on Monday, and maybe you, like Sandra Meyer, will be in the winner's circle for the coming week. As always, I'd like to thank the management of ECTV, our president Tyler Gudex, our general manager Laura Wengler, our producer, or my producer and cameraman Scott McFerrin, and of course my artistic director, the incomparable Cooper Ledbina. I say it every week, but it bears repeating. If there's anything about this show that you like, Scott and Cooper's fingerprints are all over it. If you happen to pass them in the hallway sometime, let them know that you enjoy the show. I think they'd appreciate the pat on the back. There you have it, folks. That's our show for this week. I really want to thank you, most of all, for allowing me to join you this past half hour. I hope you had a good time. I know I did. Until next week, I hope you can all see that East Castle Place continues to open up a little bit more every single week. Who knows what we'll all be enjoying next week at this time. Until then, however, I ask you to please be safe, be smart, and be patient. We're all going to be together again to enjoy all of that wonderful East Castle Place hospitality. Until next week, I'm your host and the Quizmaster, Mike Brever. So long, everybody.